Welcome to another episode of Project 2JZ28. In today's episode, we avoided danger once more, you could say. I had a good friend of mine who is a subscriber, Ryan, come over and took him for a ride in the Camaro. And when we get back, he's saying, "Oh man, you can smell the E85." I was like, "Yeah, I can too, but it shouldn't smell that way." And I ended up having a massive fuel leak, which is mostly evaporated and dried now, coming from the car. From what we can tell, I believe it's coming right from here, where this injector meets the fuel rail. I talked to Blake. He believes it's a matter of getting an O-ring that perhaps when the car was apart, one of the several times it's been apart already for miscellaneous things, that an O-ring got damaged. So I am going to pull the fuel rail and see if I can pull the O-ring on my own without damaging anything further. I've got a full set coming. The problem is, and I know we talked about this earlier in the build, is time. Usually time's not a factor. Of course, we have other things on the books for the Camaro here. I am putting a new Mosier 9-inch rear in the car. It's got the Mosier 12 bolt in there now. And I have an appointment for Mid-America Customs, the place where we got the car dynoed, to swap the rear for me, and that's coming up early next week. I ordered a set of the O-rings, and I just found out today that they're not going to arrive until the day I'm supposed to drop this off. So I don't really want to drop it off on a trailer not running. That's not ideal or good for anybody. So I'm going to attempt to try and locally outsource one of the O-rings. So I've got to pull it, and we'll see if we can get lucky and get one soon. And then hopefully I can call Blake. Hopefully his schedule allows to come over between now and then and get it all put together. All giant pain in the butt because of time crunch. Usually when you got all the time in the world, it's not a big deal. But anyway, back to earlier part of the story. The good news is that nothing caught on fire. E85 has an actual fairly high flash point because it was spraying all over the place. I mean, it was all over the hood, dripping down on the downpipe after we took it out for a spin. It went from what looked like 3/4 of a tank in the car on the gauge to where the light was coming on, where it was way empty in less than a half mile. So it was spraying all kinds of fuel. There was a fuel trail in my barn all the way behind the car. It was pretty massive, and honestly, I got pretty lucky that nothing caught on fire and that didn't end the project and possibly myself and my friend. So anyway, I'm gonna start pulling things apart and we'll get going. Okay, so on initial inspection, trying to take it off, I noticed every single bolt on the fuel rail was hand loose. So I gave Blake a call. He said that originally when we had those much larger injectors put in the car, that he had machined spacers for those specific so you could snug them down and they would fit precisely. Later the car went to Safe. Safe ended up saying those injectors were way too big. We put the appropriate 2000 cc injectors in that are in it now. I think Safe pulled those spacers. So it's possible that just the vibration over time, if these bolts are really in here just hand tight or very loose, that have just come loose on their own. I talked to Blake. He thinks that's more likely than a bad O-ring at this point, given how much fuel it was spraying. So I'm going to attempt to tighten these things down on my own, and you guys will see if I'm successful or not. I'll have the camera on, and after I tighten down these bolts to the fuel rail, I will key the ignition. It'll prime the pumps. We'll get some fuel spraying in there, and we'll see if it seals it up. If it does, maybe we'll get lucky. If it doesn't, Blake can come over in a few days and he can give it a shot, and then we're hoping, if that's the case where it's not the fuel rail for some reason and we're wrong and it is an O-ring, we can outsource one locally and still be able to make our deadline for getting it done and running in time to have the new rear put in. So tighten them down and we'll give it a shot here. Okay, well, I tightened them down, and I noticed right off the bat that this first one, that it was coming out, it's horrible to get on camera, but there was a bit of a gap in between that, and as I tightened, it lessened that gap down to match all the rest. Now, I didn't see the full fuel leak. I only saw the remnants of the pressure left in the system after I shut the car off and got in here, but when I did see it, it was clearly coming out of this one. So perhaps I got lucky. I will find out here shortly as I pressurize the fuel system and hope fuel does not spray every which way. Well, here goes nothing. Okay, well, no fuel, that's good. However, I've got so little fuel. All right, well, hey, so far so good. I think I may have gotten lucky. I don't see any fuel leaking, so that may have done it. The next problem is that I literally bled so much freaking fuel out on that my gauge is showing me incredibly empty. I don't know how much fuel I got left. You can see the pressure is building off. Normally this will peak pressure right around 50, which it will build initially, and then it dies off. But then again, the pump's not continually running, it just primes it initially, so that could be normal bleed off. So I'm gonna go get some fuel. I guess we'll put some fuel in there and give her a shot again, and maybe we got lucky enough. It's just a simple something we tightened down. Okay, just got done dumping 5 gallons of fuel in there. So we'll try again. I know it's pressurizing before, but I don't know how much fuel we actually had in the tank. Pressure's good. Sorry about that, my battery died in the GoPro. But basically, seems to be fine. Started it up, idled, checked, seems to be fine. Obviously, driving it now, seems to be fine. Good fuel pressure. Fuel's not leaking like a sieve. Checked it once or twice, seems to be good. So maybe all right. Probably gonna get with Blake, make those spacers at some point in time to hold those things where they need to be so I can tighten them down accordingly and they won't move. Some of you might be asking, hey, why are you changing the rear? Well, if you don't know, I'm yelling. It's because all that noise from the back. I don't know why, but the rear has gotten more noisy. Sean had been concerned when I told him that he thought I had messed something up, which I don't know, it could be damaged. I've railed on it a few times and it doesn't seem to change too much. My friend Jerry, who put that rear, rebuilt it with the gears, did say it's probably going to be noisy, although I really hadn't noticed this much noise until recently, so I'm not sure what to change. Either way, the other rear end is stronger, which I just don't want to break anything. You know, the things I've broke so far, if you guys are subscribers, and how many things have gone wrong, and that's by spending the money and taking the time to do everything right. Shit still happens. But, and the rear should theoretically be fine. It's not like I'm launching this thing out of the hole hard. It doesn't even have anything really down low until I get it a boost and I hit it with nitrous on slicks or anything. But the rear end I'm going to, the Mosier 9-inch, should be stronger. So we're just upgrading for precaution so I don't have issues in the future. So anyway, I think this problem is fixed, hopefully. Yes, so when it rains it pours. So I'm currently stranded with the Camaro, and it seems like true that the rail needed to be tightened, but that O-ring is hanging on by a thread. It's actually missing a piece. I just pulled it off there. So that's clearly not going to seal. I will have to get something to fit in the meantime, and I'm waiting for a ride so I can go home and hopefully get my trailer and get this POS back to my shop. It's not a POS, but in moments like these, it makes me feel that way. So anyway, I digress. I'm just looking at the obvious right now. The other rings are all green. So this one, I think, was thrown on there and it's probably not the right size. So anyway, we'll see what we can do, and the saga continues. Okay, end result. I called a buddy who took me to a local parts store where we found an O-ring that was close-ish, and I managed to put it in, get it installed, verify it wasn't leaking, and as I'm talking to you now, I just literally limped the car home, and I didn't see anything moving on the fuel gauge, and nothing soaking wet under here. So I think I limped it home successfully on the bad O-ring. So I guess what I had was, not only were these hand loose, but also the O-ring was in fact cut and pinched in there. So I've got some new O-rings coming. We'll get to replace what they need later, and hopefully still be able to make that deadline on Monday.